Hi, Steve.
Kapsha, and Andrea Milad.
Hello, everyone. I just wanted to
And this is our general manager,
It's in
Rachel.
this envelope. That was not the good email.
Okay. Okay. Why don't we get started? Everybody ready?
We need it. Rachel,
Yeah, you want to.
we okay for Sarah?
Can you? Are we okay?
I have it in the car.
You're picking up the noise or you're picking us?
Okay, because it would be, I think that is helping us with circulation a little bit.
Okay.
We're on now, are you kidding?
You have boards.
Yeah. Well, let's cut that part. Maybe that too. Keep it for the blooper reel.
What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I just, I need to breathe where it's coming from. Okay.
I think 1, 2 components and then just watch I didn't see anybody running for selling soup.
For, no.
Do you know if anybody running like as a
Somebody told me about it last night, actually. But he was asking at the time, commitment, good, more than just me.
Tell them what Manoli told me. Oh, don't take very much to know.
But I encourage everybody. I just want to, just the meeting.
Yeah, that is very nice. I do.
I think
We had a meeting with one of Yeah. Oh, how exciting.
Well, not really.
Okay. Yep. All right. Let's get started.
Yes, it is. Yeah, that's very true.
A little crooked, but so much for that.
Rachel, are we on? Okay. All right. I'd like to call the meeting to order, please. So this is the October meeting of ANC 3F. I'm Maliki Nugent. I'm the chairman of 3F and the commissioner for 3F06. So why don't we do roll call first to establish a quorum. David?
I'm David Dickinson. I'm the commissioner of ANC 3F01.
Mary Beth Ray, 3F3.
Sally Gresham, 3F4.
Shirley Adelstein, 3F2.
Patrick Hopchick, 3F07.
Andrea Mola, 3F05.
Great. So with everyone present, we have a quorum being 4 commissioners present. So next order of business, we will consider our agenda. Now our agenda is divided into 2 parts. We have a consent agenda with 5 items that we don't plan to discuss unless there is reason to tonight, and then a regular agenda with some other items. So just quickly, I'll read the items on the consent agenda. Letter of support for Friends of Forest Hills Playground Halloween Party. Letter of support for Friends of Forest Hills Park DPR Partnership Application. A resolution regarding the extension of a sidewalk on Yuma Street. A resolution regarding public space application at 2916 Chesapeake Street. And a resolution regarding rent control legislation. So all of these items have been circulated publicly and posted on our website for at least a week. So I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Before you do that,
I have a question, Maliki.
Yes.
I thought the grant for Forest Hills Neighborhood Alliance, I thought that was also going to be on the consent agenda. Can I make a motion that we add that to the consent agenda?
Okay. Is there a second?
second.
Wait, for which one?
The grant for the Forest Hills Alliance, $3,000 grant.
Oh, that's the one related to the stream.
The trees.
Yeah.
Right. That was also posted on the web,
Yeah.
circulated and posted online. We just have that in a different part of the agenda. Is there any discussion? No? Okay, so all in favor of moving the application from Forest Hills Neighborhood Alliance for a grant to support plantings along Broad Branch Stream up to the consent agenda?
Aye.
Opposed? None? So it passes. Okay, so there's a motion on the table to approve the agenda as amended.
Excuse me, Chairman Nugent. I don't know if DC Water is here tonight. Are they here tonight? We can certainly we can keep it on the agenda, but I'm not aware that they're
Okay.
going to make a presentation. Otherwise, I'm fine, sorry.
Any other discussion?
There's no DC lib. Okay.
Which is that?
The
Item 13.
13?
the last presentation.
We're taking that off the agenda?
We'll keep it on. I'm just giving you a heads up that I don't
Okay.
believe they're here.
Okay, any other discussion? All in favor of the agenda as amended? Opposed? None? So the agenda passes, and for the record, that means that everything on the consent agenda passes unanimously 7-0-0. Okay. So we will move to the next item on the agenda, Commissioner announcements and updates. David, would you like to go first?
Sure, thank you. I have a few items. I announced at last month's ANC meeting that the Hearst Elementary is hosting its annual e-cycle, which will take place on Saturday, November 5th from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. If you're in the neighborhood, and even if you're not, anywhere in the city or even in Virginia or Maryland, come on in. They are recycling electronics, TVs, stereos, anything kind of wire-like, along with just appliances and heavy metals, pipes, etc. They also are providing a document shredding service. Most of these have a small fee associated with it, and you can go to the HearstES.org website to learn more information. But Hearst is spelled HearStes.org. So in addition to the electronics and document shredding, there'll be a bike swap. Bring your kids' bikes and pick up a bike. If you want to donate money or not, that's great. Hopefully there'll be a bike mechanic there as well. There's also a Washington Animal Rescue League / Washington Humane Society are going to have a pet adoption van there, and they're the typical elementary school type kid activities, rock climbing gym and moon bounce and all that fun stuff, and bake sale. So come on out. It's actually a great community-oriented event. It's not designed to raise money for the Hearst PTA. It's designed to help the community, and it's pretty cool. So again, the date is Saturday, November 5th at Hearst Elementary, which is 3950 37th Street Northwest. November 5th from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Sort of also related to Hearst, there's a DPR facility there, Hearst Park or Hearst Recreation Center. That's been an ongoing issue or matter between DGS and DPR that are looking to renovate the park. The last public meeting was on September 8th. I'm not sure when the next public planning meeting would be, but I'm hoping there'll be at least one more before the end of the year. DPR and DGS are planning a public survey, which would be an online survey, but they also hope to have a written survey available for those without electronic access. And the purpose of the survey would be to survey or solicit opinion on 3 different park design ideas. And on the DGS website, when you go to construction activities, you can pull up the September 8th presentation that includes the 3 different proposals, or you can contact me and I'd be happy to send that to you. But the idea of the survey is to get broad input on the question of park design, and also including other potential concerns related to the park, whether it's shade on the playground or safety issues and different hydrology, stormwater issues, and things of that nature. I had hoped that survey would have been out by now. It's not. So stay tuned for that. I'll try to work with our website to make sure that information in the survey is posted. We'll also put that on the various community listservs as well. There's also been an ongoing concern about access to the Hearst Elementary gym. There is, in several other DCPS, DPR sites, including, for example, Stoddard, they have a memorandum of understanding between the school and DPR to have shared access. It's been sort of a disappointment that the gym was open a year and a half ago, and the relevant agencies have said known about this need for a long time, and yet that still hasn't come to fruition. So I just giving a status update and also passing along my personal bewilderment. As many of you know, Sidwell Elementary is in the process or in the continuing development of a lower school attached to the middle and upper school at Sidwell. I mentioned at last month's meeting that there is current litigation between the Washington home owners and board and representatives of the current occupants of the Washington home about the proper, hate to characterize it, but just the proper dissolution of the facility and whether those tenants have a right of access or right of first refusal to what happens to that property. So according to Sidwell's representatives, they're sort of in a wait-and-see mode before they're proceeding with final purchase and final planning for the school. I also want to, sort of switching gears, announce that, and there are representatives from Councilmember Che's office here that can provide further information, but at last month's ANC meeting we had Mr. Dan Diaz, who gave a very informed and heartfelt presentation on the Death with Dignity Act that the DC Council is entertaining. We as a ANC have not yet formally decided whether to pass a resolution in support of the act. We can talk about that later in the meeting, but I wanted to let you know that I believe it cleared the initial committee, and that there was a potential plan to vote on that as a council today. And my understanding is Councilmember Alexander shifted that vote to a legislative session on November 1st, and the full council may or may not vote on it then or on November 18th. So for those of you in the community, and some of you have reached out to our ANC, pro or con on the issue, or support or concern about the bill, please feel free to reach out to the ANC or to myself. Also to volunteer Councilmember Che's office, but she certainly is one of the primary sponsors of the bill. So we may entertain it at a special session, or we may just provide our individual input to the council. But given the election coming up on November 5th, if you're looking for issues other than education and rent control and other important issues, you might think about that and asking council members up for election. I believe that's all I have. November 8th is the election. Thank you. What did I say?
Okay.
Did I say the 5th? I don't know. 5th has been stuck in my mind. Sorry.
Vote early for David
Because
Dickinson.
I have a note.
There's something very important on November 5th. Thank you.
Okay. Good evening. I have 5 short announcements. The first is that Van Ness Main Street will be hosting a fundraiser on Saturday, November 5th, from 7 to 9 after you vote, or not,
Right.
from
Early
7
absentee.
to 9 p.m. at Park Van Ness. And the event will feature food donated by our brand new restaurants, Spolina
Belina.
and Soapstone Market. And fine wines will be donated by Calvert Woodley, Sally Gresham, Commissioner Gresham is donating the floral arrangements, and Sheldon Ray is donating craft beer. The cost is $50, and if you'd like an invitation, please see me or Teresa Cameron, or you can also email us, and all are welcome. We hope you'll turn out for what promises to be a really beautiful evening. The second announcement is 3010 Albemarle Street. In the almost 4 years that I have been on the ANC, I have been working on this, and we have two bits of good news. One is the owner finally mowed, and the second is that after litigation, DDOT won its appeal ruling the driveway unlawful. So the driveway is wider than the 12 feet, which is the limit according to DDOT regulation. So I want to thank Ian Maggard, where's Ian? There's Ian, for his help from the mayor's office, and Matt Marcoux of DDOT. And we don't have a time frame, but I am told by DDOT that they are going to continue to work with the owner to try to come to a resolution as soon as possible. The third announcement is that this Saturday from 10 to noon, the Coalition for Smarter Growth will feature Van Ness as its neighborhood walk. So some of you might remember there was a walk in October of 2012 in Van Ness. And ultimately Van Ness Main Street. So this is really exciting. You can go to the Smarter Growth website, and it says Van Ness, a new spark. With the new UDC Student Center, the Art Deco-inspired Park Van Ness, and the new WAMU offices, this once quiet stop on the Red Line is awakening. We'll learn how local residents have successfully pushed for improvements, including safer conditions for pedestrians, and we'll talk about how the area can continue to evolve. So I hope you'll all come. It's free. You can register. They just want an idea of how many people are coming, and you can go to the website, smartergrowth.net. The fourth announcement is the Cleveland Park Library, which is being renovated, will move into UDC Swing Space on Halloween. So very exciting. We already have lots of kids in the neighborhood. Hopefully this will bring even more kids and more families to support our Van Ness merchants. And finally, I want to announce that our neighbor, Marge Elfin, who is such a treasure, has written a new book called A Nation on Trial, France and the Legacy of the Dreyfus Affair. And the Forest Hills Connection is hosting a book talk by Marge. It's a fundraiser for the Forest Hills Connection. It's $20, suggested donation. And it'll be on the Sunday before Halloween, Sunday, October 30th, from 3 to 4:30 at the home of Jane and Daniel Solomon, which is a beautiful place. And if you haven't been to the Solomons, it's worth a visit just to see the house. So I hope you'll all come and support our literary Forest Hills. Thank you.
The address and where to RSVP?
2935 Albemarle is the address. And if you go to the Forest Hills Connection website, it'll lead you to the RSVP.
Okay, we got to bring some levity into this. Okay, I have 3 announcements, if I can see it from the hat. The Friends of Forest Hill Playground will be hosting their annual spectacular. Kate's in the audience. She can tell us all about it. On Saturday, October 29th, from 11 to 1 p.m. This Halloween party has been hosted for many decades and is well known in the neighborhood as one of the biggest community events for families. As previous Halloween parties, the 2-hour event will include a bake sale, Orman's pizza truck selling pizza, arts and crafts, a music performance by Abracadabra Alex, who has been there last year and a couple years before, as well as a costume parade for the young children. Well, adults can dress up too. It is a much anticipated and fun for our community hood event, and for the kids especially. Break out that costume and see everyone there. And to continue on the Halloween spirit, Van Ness Main Street is sponsoring a Van Ness Merchant Halloween open house on the same Saturday, October 29th, from 1 to 2 p.m. So all the kids and parents in costume from the Forest Hills Halloween Party Parade can march up Connecticut Avenue and join the next spooky fun. However, all kids from the area are welcome to be in costume and will be able to trick-or-treat through the Van Ness corridor from Albemarle Street to Van Ness and back. So gather at the UDC Farmers Market in front of the Van Ness Main Street offices at 1 p.m. and zombie on. Further information will be on VN's social media and the Forest Hills Connection. Van Ness, okay, so now this is not Halloween.
She still has on her witch
but I
hat,
still have
so
on
be
my witch
careful.
hat. Van Ness Main Streets continues making streetscape improvements along our Connecticut Avenue strip. I announced last meeting that the businesses got grants and they all did a lot of work, and this is the continuation of that work on the outside by the Van Ness Main Street board themselves. The outdated awnings have been removed from the Albemarle corners, 2 buildings exposing a simple deco design. The building's facades have been spruced up by painting the original stucco and cleaning the streamlined metal decorative panels. Future improvements will include new signage, exterior lighting, and new surrounding concrete paved areas for the East Corner businesses. Diplomat Cleaners, Italian Pizza Kitchen, the Nail Salon, Tide Pad Restaurant, and the Cutting Edge Barbershop are all thrilled by the progress and positive customer comments. Kudos to the Van Ness Main Street Board, Design Committee, Teresa, and Travis Price Architects for making this happen. Okay,
Excuse
I'll take
me.
my head off.
Excuse me, can I ask, when is the district officially celebrating Halloween? When are kids going out to trick or treat?
October 31st,
Monday, October 31st?
Monday night.
Okay. Just thought I'd
But
go, I thought
everything's
I'd go to
happening
the
all
source.
weekend, so.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you. So I just have one quick announcement. Sheridan School will hold its annual meeting with neighbors on October 27th from 6 to 7 p.m. at the school, in the World Room of the school. This is a requirement of their BZA conditions with the neighborhood, with us, with the ANC and with the neighborhood, that they meet once a year with the neighbors to hear grievances, to hear how things are going, and to respond to comments and questions. So that 6 to 7 p.m. on October 27th. So it really affects largely the people who live on Yuma Street and Alton Place. But of course, anyone's welcome. That's all.
I have 4 quick announcements, apart from apologizing for my cough, which you'll have to endure. I'm sorry about that. First, we had a successful community meeting on rent concessions last week with council members Mary Che and Anita Bonds at 3003 Van Ness. Some of you might remember we discussed that issue at our last meeting. It was very well attended and provided community members with opportunities to provide feedback to the council members on rent control legislation. That legislation will be discussed at a hearing tomorrow morning, a meeting of the Committee on Housing and Community Development. For anyone who's following these bills and would like to attend, it's open to the public and will also be streamed online. It will take place at 10 a.m. in room 123 of the Wilson building. I'll be there testifying, so keep an eye out for that. Second, the UDC Community Campus Task Force will have its quarterly meeting this Wednesday, so tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. in room A3 of Building 44. I see some of our UDC colleagues are here tonight, so thank you for being here. The agenda includes updates on the Murch Elementary Swing Space, the UDC Housing Program, student enrollment, and upcoming events. Third, I'd like to pass along a reminder from our colleagues at ANC 3C for some more Halloween events. Be sure to mark your calendars for the National Zoo's upcoming Halloween events. First up is Boo at the Zoo, Friday, October 21st through Sunday, October 23rd. They will have treat stations, animal demonstrations, keeper chats, decorated trails, and a, quote, frightfully fun evening, so don't miss that. They will also be hosting Night of the Living Zoo on October 28th, where you can witness death-defying acts and amazing oddities. This is an adults-only Halloween party, so there is stuff going on for adults. And finally, I just wanted to share that on the back table, some of you might remember that our ANC, along with some other Ward 3 ANCs, helped to fund this project, this collaboration between Iona Senior Services and DC Greens. It's a Where to Find food guide for Ward 3, which we've not had before, even though we do have a good amount of food insecurity in our ward. So if you would find this helpful or know anyone who would, it's on the back table. That's it.
Thank you.
I've got a single announcement. I just want to thank all of the volunteers from the community and the adjoining areas who got together with ANC's Parks and Trails Committee and the Rock Creek Conservancy for a cleanup in Melvin Hazen on Saturday, October 8th. We had a great time removing some invasive species and taking care of some of the newly planted trees this year. Keep on the lookout for additional opportunities to take care of our parks, both through our subcommittee. I think Mr. Maggard might have something too coming up. It's still in the plannings? Okay. Well, when the details are ready, I'll help get that out too. So, thanks.
I also have one single announcement. It's also related to an event in Broad Branch Stream. This past Sunday was the kickoff event for the re-landscaping and basically bringing back to active life of the Broad Branch Stream area. First phase has been completed. The second phase is now just starting. They got a River Smart grant. The kickoff event includes some cleanup of invasive species and sort of general landscaping around the area. Councilmember Che was there to help kick it off, as well as Ian Maggard from the mayor's office. So it was great, and there will be more RCC cleanup, Rock Creek Conservancy sponsored cleanup events in our ANC, I'm sure.
Great. Okay, thank you. So we'll move to the next item on the agenda. Move to the next item on the agenda, which is committee reports. So do you have Parks and Trails?
There was no Parks and Trails, or Soapstone Melvin Hazen Parks and Trails meeting in October, but the upcoming meeting in November is scheduled for the 14th. It's open to the public. It happens here at 7 p.m. just down the hall at the conference room, and I'd love to see you there.
At what time?
7.
And I'll just give a quick readout from the Streets and Sidewalks meeting. We had our meeting on October 13th. We continue to talk about the ways we will conduct a survey of street and sidewalk issues in the neighborhood. We talked a little bit more about the categories of things that we will look for when we do that survey, and just the mechanics of how we divide up the neighborhood, how we actually record the data that we collect. So I will circulate minutes, a readout from that meeting to the members of the committee, and then the plan is we will do a trial run on the data collection, and assuming that goes well, we'll then launch the full survey. Okay. The last one was the Grants Committee. The Grants Committee unanimously agreed to recommend approval of the grant that we just approved, so that's done. And we'll move on to Community Open Forum. So this is a time for anybody in the community who has an issue that they wish to raise that's not otherwise on our agenda. Please come up to the mic, identify yourself, and the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ian Maggard. I'm the Ward 3 liaison for the Mayor's Office of Community Relations and Services. I wanted to invite everyone to join the mayor on Saturday at 9 a.m. at Fletcher's Cove to run in the park run. It's a partnership for Fit DC, the mayor's initiative to Get Fit, Park Run, and also Teens Run DC. So we'll be out there at 9 a.m. on Saturday, and we'll run a 5K. So, thank you.
I'm sorry, Ian, can you just, maybe it's the fan, can you say what the name of the event is?
Oh yeah, it's Fit DC Park Run,
Okay, thank
5K. So Park Run, they do a 5K out there on the C&O Canal, and they start at Fletcher's Cove. And the mayor will be running as well. So.
My understanding is that Park Run, one of the neat parts about it is they don't charge an entrance.
Oh, no, exactly. And it's a timed 5K. So.
Professionally run, but free.
Yeah, exactly. And I believe Park Run now has 2, I think, in DC. So, pretty neat.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. It's Teresa Cameron with Van Ness Main Street. I hope everyone's doing well. Mary Beth gave some great updates, but I wanted to let you know that Van Ness Main Street finished our fiscal year with the district, and we're very excited about that. And so we're now on to the new fiscal year, so we're not a baby anymore, so that's exciting. We also, I hope many of you went to Art All Night. It was very successful. We had more people out on the street than I think we've ever had in Van Ness. A lot of great activities, a lot of artists who came out and helped us make a really fantastic event. So we're hoping to do more activities like that in Van Ness. And speaking of great things in Van Ness, we have a new really great guide that's all of our businesses in Van Ness, and we've been giving this out to the concerts that are occurring at the District of Columbia's Theater for the Performing Arts, because we have several organizations that are performing there this year due to renovations at the Kennedy Center, and we're really proud that we have such a great center, and we're trying to encourage our concert goers to come to our local businesses and participate in buying food and other activities. So we also will be launching our website in the next week, and we're really excited about that. So that's vansmainstreet.org. But you can always follow us on Twitter at Van Ness Main Street ST, or Instagram, and also Facebook. So I'm looking forward to keeping in touch with all of you guys, and I hope that you always email me at tcameron@vansmainstreet.org. I'm always happy to put up events or activities that are happening in the corridor. And I want to thank Commissioner Gresham and Commissioner Ray for all the work that they've done, and especially on the Albemarle Corner. A lot of work has been done also that the ANC Commission did to help get our Thai Pad, their seating outdoor, as well as Soapstone Market. And speaking of Soapstone Market, we have an event, Jazz at VN, which is our jazz monthly event, and it's going to be next Tuesday at Soapstone Market from 5 to 7 p.m., and it's going to feature the music of Levine Music. So hope you all join us there. Thanks.
Thank you.
Teresa, sorry, it's Tuesday?
Next Tuesday or Thursday? Tuesday the 20th.
Good evening. Michelle Pouchot from UDC, and glad to be back with you all. As you already heard, we're having the Community Task Force meeting tomorrow night at UDC at 6:30. Hope folks will come out and we'll have a lively dialogue. I do want to give you a little update on merch. Things are going pretty well. There's been discussions around the use of the athletic facilities, and because that use hadn't been predetermined and predefined, we're working closely with MERS to see how we can accommodate their uses in keeping with the many things that UDC has to do in those spaces. So we've worked out the outdoor fields, and that's operating quite well. Inside the gymnasium, there's a few things that have to be done in order to accommodate the dual services, and we expect that those activities will be able to be inside come the new semester. And so that's where we are right now, and we can talk more about that at the task force meeting tomorrow. The other things I think you've heard about, the library will be opening up the end of the month, and I'm really excited about that because I'm a big library user, and it'll be nice to have one to walk down to. Our wellness center did open, but I'd like to call it a soft launch. It's only open for students and faculty and staff at the university. They're doing the soft launch to work out the kinks and see how the operations go, and then we expect to open it to the community within the next couple months.
What is this a launch of?
I'm sorry?
What is this a soft launch of?
The Wellness Center is what we call it, but I won't say those words, okay? There will be month-to-month fees, and there will not be a contract. And so hopefully I'll have the final cost for you at the next ANC meeting or soon, but we do expect it to be very affordable. Some upcoming events you've already heard about. Really excited about working with the ANC, about housing more activities at UDC, and we welcome you. So thank you for reaching out to us and working closely with Van Ness Main Streets. The task force meeting is Wednesday. On Thursday, we have what we call the Big Read on campus, and the author of I think I didn't write it here. Do you have it? The Big Read. Yep, I didn't write it here. I'll come back to it. There's also a career fair that day. On the 7th, there's a graduate fair. On November 9th, we'll have a big Veterans Day event, so hopefully you can come out for that. And as you've heard, the Washington Performing Arts is having a series of activities on campus at the theater, and their next activity is October 29th. It's a pianist, and then there'll be activities in mid-November. There's a continuing art exhibit called Political Arena. The artist is Carlos Hernandez. It will be on exhibit until November 10th, and it's open Mondays through Thursdays from 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. If you go to our website, you'll see all that information there. We are launching a new website soon, within the next couple of weeks, so I'd love to get your feedback on that once we have it. Thank you.
Is that a website for the whole school or for the theater?
It's for the whole school.
Will that have, you've talked before about centralizing a calendar. Is that still down the road, or will that be on the new website?
It's still a little further down the road. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Michelle.
Hello, I just wanted to briefly introduce myself. My name is Mike Porcello. I'm a staff member in Councilmember Che's office, and I'll be a representative towards the ANC moving forward. I unfortunately don't have any cards with me today, having started very recently, but I'll be sharing my contact information with the ANC commissioners. And if you have any need to contact me or the office, feel free to reach out to them before the next meeting, and they'll be happy to connect you with me. It's Porcello. It's Michael.
What is your email address?
It's mporcello, so it's my first last name, at dccouncil.us, and I will send an email to you all in the morning with that information as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak during the open forum? No? Okay, and we'll move on to the next item on our agenda, which is a presentation on the Kuwaiti Embassy BZA application and other issues. So, why don't I turn it over to the floor to Commissioner Jakopczyk? To Mary Beth. Okay.
And Mary Beth.
And Mary Beth.
Well, it's in her SMD.
Great. Are you Mr. Collins? Yeah, okay. Great. Come on up. I haven't met you. Can you? Hi, how are you? Welcome. So many of you know that the beautiful French provincial home at the intersection of Fessenden and Linnean was purchased by the state of Kuwait for its ambassador's residence. And so a few weeks ago, I received a letter from the ambassador and from Mr. Collins, who represents the embassy of the state of Kuwait, saying that they plan to build a security station behind the shrubs, if you will, in front of the house. And so that's what this is about. They will have to file an application with the BZA, Board of Zoning Adjustment. And so that's what this is about. So.
Great, thank you. May we use your easel?
Absolutely.
And I'll try and stand out. I'll try and stand out of the way. My name is Chris Collins. I'm with Holland and Knight, and with me is our two people, Michael Jones of Jones Associates Architects. Jones Associates has been retained by the embassy to help with the siting and location of the building. It's a manufactured building, and the challenge is to place it properly to have the least amount of impact. And also with us is Jacqueline Bothma. Jacqueline is with Securitas. And
Can I ask you to repeat? Jack, can you ask?
Jacqueline Bothma. My last name Bothma.
Thank you.
And Ms. Bothma is a diplomatic security expert with Securitas. And so we're here to talk about the, well, let me just give some background. The reason that we're going to the Board of Zoning Adjustment is for a special exception for the location of the accessory building. It is considered an accessory building, and they are allowed by right to be in the side yard or the rear yard, but they can locate in the front yard only by special exception approval from the Board of Zoning Adjustment. We have not yet filed an application. We wanted to come here first and just tell you about it so that you wouldn't be surprised by an application that's brought to the BZA. We will come back to you prior to the public hearing. We anticipate filing probably within the next 5 business days, and we'll certainly get a copy up to the ANC of our filing. I've given the commissioners a set of plans, and I apologize for missing the email from yesterday, which I found this afternoon and sent out to everyone, and I brought copies for the commissioners with that insertion and extra copies if anyone's needed. So,
do you want me to distribute mine?
Do I need to walk them down?
No, that's all right. I'll do that.
All right. Well, with that, we'll be here to answer questions, but let me just turn it over to Michael Jones, who can describe in more detail the application.
I'm sure you all know the property is a beautiful property. I was astounded when I was able to walk the grounds, and it feels like it flows into the DC property behind. The house itself is generous, but it is back about 40 feet from the property line, I believe, and some distance from the street. There's a pool house at the rear, and that's effectively the only 2 buildings on the property currently. There's a fairly generous entrance drive here. There's a sort of a turnaround drop-off in the front that has parking, that accommodates parking there. A garage here on the side. There's also parking available over here as well. And there's a turnaround so that you can back out and exit the property out of either one of the gates. Excuse me. Brick and wrought iron gate and fence that sort of lines the property here and runs all the way along Fessenden, very, very carefully and beautifully landscaped. And the idea is to preserve that landscape, to nail that 15-foot setback line, building restriction line, and then very simply follow the curve of the curb. Oops, I'm sorry. With this guardhouse, it sort of nestles in here behind the shrubs, in front of the curb, behind the landscaping, and sort of concealed in there so that it's an impure geometry. It's not something that I would normally do, but in this case, following the curve and then very simply setting up pervious pavers that allow them to get out. The whole idea being that this is as discreet as possible. There's no intercom, there are no lights. It's just a very quiet little building that's in here, and the attendant or the guard has to get out and then access the vehicle here as they pull up. in terms of its size and scale, let me pull these down. It's about 9 feet tall, 8 feet 8 inches tall. There is a very large tree right here, and what we're doing is we're setting, the intention is to set this on a structural slab, reinforced slab on the pilings, excuse me, that can then be hand dug, frankly. And it's an expensive way to do it, but it's the one way that we can assure ourselves that this tree is going to survive. This is a beautiful tree. It's probably 80 feet tall. We don't want to lose that. And we've already spoken with he's an urban forester, plant specialist anyway, and he's made recommendations as to how to go about locating this and excavating for it and all of that, protecting the roots. Any roots larger than 2 inches diameter, we basically have to tag and protect and dig around and all of that. So with pilings, with a structural slab and the building sort of floating above that, and all of that hand dug, limiting where the bobcats go and all of that, we believe that we can preserve this tree. The other trees on site we leave alone. There's a line of 8 foot tall hollies, and they can remain. We're nowhere close to those. There's a secondary line of roughly 20 foot tall trees, but they're a ways away from property. I mean, from this building, and we preserve those as well. So the only thing within the drip line of is this large tree. And it looks like by very, very carefully excavating around it, we're able to avoid that. The building itself, clear glass. It's painted out. The metallic pieces are painted out to match the stonework on the house itself, and the brick is intended to match the house. So it's again very discreet. This gives you a sense of how visible it is from the street. Obviously, that's a frontal elevation, but you're looking through landscaping, and yeah, you'll get a trace of what's behind there, but I think it's going to be very, very low-key, put that way. Then, very briefly, looking at the site itself, that is where the building is intended to go, this little guardhouse. That is looking sort of from the guardhouse back at the entrance gate itself. And a couple of views, sorry for the shuffling there, but a couple of views looking into the property. And here you get sort of an oblique view where you might be able to catch a glimpse of this thing. Otherwise, I think it's pretty well screened. I mean, here, obviously, it's behind the landscaping, it's lush, it's mature, and it's going to be preserved, so I don't see any real hint of what's behind there.
That was our presentation. Have any questions?
I have some, but I'll you're better versed. I'll follow you.
Okay. I was just going to ask you, who did you talk to from Urban Forestry Administration? Do you know?
Fellow's name is it's Wolf, and I can't remember if it's. You recall?
It was in the Urban Forestry Administration of Columbia?
No.
It was a private sector.
No.
Yeah,
It's a
it's an arborist, right?
So,
He has a practice, and he's written a number of papers. But I don't recall his name. It's Wolf,
is it the Care of Trees? Or,
Yeah, we'll find out.
okay. I don't
I have a question.
know.
Go ahead, Matt, you have a question about building control?
Well, do you have a specific question?
No, mine was a similar question. So
Okay. I commend you on the overall look. I know it's a hard job to disguise a building. And thank you for your presentation, because actually you answered quite a few of my questions,
Okay.
which I was the commissioner that wrote a couple of questions about the building restriction line. So that was good to get that today, even though it was late. I did look at it. It's kind of and it's good that you mentioned about what you're doing with the slab, because most of the time you have to dig and have a 30-inch foundation. So that was one of the major questions. Would it be possible for you to, and I know you're trying to make it just not objectionable, but would it be possible to miss that large tree, which is very large and very nice, to the east by elongating the building and going across the building, the building restriction line, which is done. I know you're going to look at me funny, but then you would come 15 feet towards the 3 trees on your site plan. If you could show people these 3 trees. And then the building would be more elongated and not near the specimen tree. I'm just, and I do know that you would have to go for a public space permit as well as a BZA application, but it's done all the time. I'm just throwing it out there. Possibly that would be a less restrictive footprint for you to deal with, because I know that's difficult.
Sally, are you concerned about the safety of the tree, despite
Yes.
the fact that they say that they're going to try to take care of it?
Yeah,
Okay.
because it's very close. It's only 3 feet, 2 to 3 feet from it. Okay, by the drawing I saw it was more like 2 or 3 feet, but
We've actually shortened the building up a little bit to make it a little bit greater distance, but we're only getting 5 to 7 feet away from it.
right. And usually, even if you do these kind of circumstances, you're saying, you know, protection is that you still probably going to have to do root pruning. I'm sure your arborist is going to suggest that. I'm pretty sure you're in the slope and overlay restriction area. No, you're not. No.
I think this is carved out, right?
It's in the zone.
It's in the
It's R8 now. It
right.
used to be R1A,
I mean, it's got a kind of
but
odd.
it's not in that zone that
The tree and slope overlay.
The tree and slope overlay. Okay. I'm just concerned about the tree. I know that you've addressed it to some degree. I'm just saying, would it be maybe take it under consideration to make the less impact on the tree and therefore less restriction on what you can do with the building. In the building, that's my first comment. The second comment is, I gotta get my notes here. Could you explain the guardhouse a little bit more and the concrete sidewalk? Because on the original drawings that we got, it says new concrete sidewalk, but there's greenery, and then there's plants right in front of the door. So can you kind of explain that a little bit more? How they're going to jump over the plants?
Yeah, it was pointed out to me, and so we went back and changed that, to be honest with you. But yeah,
it's clearly just a mistake.
Okay,
That's correct.
I don't.
That's
Well, I see it on this one too. You still are opening the door into the plant.
It's a pervious concrete. The intention is to have pervious concrete pavers here, and it's a little bit hard to read. The idea is that this planting, which exists currently, extends around the corner as much as possible.
Right.
We're going to have to break through it at a point here, but minimize this to the greatest extent possible, make it as slim as we can reasonably, and be able to get out, in and out of the building, you know, come around here, and the guard is actually going to come out this way, so as to allow this to sort of sweep around the corner.
Okay,
This
it's just,
planting,
it was,
which may be a little bit different than what
yeah,
we have in those
it's
drawings.
kind of odd because the door is literally going over the top of the plant, so I just,
Now
you know,
it's been changed.
well, not on this one, they
That was
haven't.
the original one that we sent, and then the next day, we talked about the other.
Are there 2 doors?
But there's 2
open?
doors,
Okay.
yeah.
There are 2 doors. I'm not sure that we need 2 doors. I think that's something we'll be able to look
Well,
at.
that's what I'm saying. Explain the guardhouse because you have 2 rooms here on a very small, is that a bathroom next to the?
No. Go ahead.
The front side is for the security officer, and then the rear end is supposed to be split, is for the driver, for the ambassador's driver to be located when he's not out.
Oh, okay, so that's the second door. Okay. I actually looked for those drawings, and I did not see the second set, even though you said they were attached, so if you can attach those. Okay. And there's no cameras, so how do you know somebody's coming up to the cars pulling up? You said there's just an intercom?
No.
There's nothing, so how,
window.
can you explain the procedure on how you're going to let people in? I mean, why do you need a guardhouse?
I don't want to get too much into the ambassador's security, obviously, but
Well,
the intention of the guardhouse is not for the security officer to be stationed in full time. He has other duties on the property and specifically around the front of the building. So it's not that he's going to be based in the guardhouse all the time. They will be walking around, and they will know when visitors are coming because all visitors are announced in his residence. We don't just have people arriving in his residence unannounced.
So then why do you need the guardhouse?
Because
Why
of
couldn't
inclement
that be
weather.
housed in the building?
Because of inclement weather, we would need the security officer to be in the front of the building in case anything does happen. He does need to be outside.
And then the other question is, I would like to see those plans, and I assume it's just a graphic, but the fence is not being changed, correct? Because of the drawing, it looks not like the fence. Okay, so I just wanted to be clear, you're not changing the fence. All right, that's all I have. Thank you.
So if I understand correctly, the guard is not there for admitting cars in and out through the gate necessarily. He's just there for doing his regular security along the front of the building, and this is a place for him to sit during inclement weather.
No, you will be letting people in when guests are announced. But the actual access control is on the gate itself already exists. So we would be opening and closing it from that point. We won't be adding any more communication.
So if he's inside the new building, the new guardhouse, and a car pulls up,
He'd have to come out.
how will he know?
Well, the visitors are announced, so we'll be expecting it. So we'll be knowing at 10 o'clock somebody is meant to be there,
I
and
see.
the security officer will be outside.
I see.
I have a couple questions.
Okay.
I think I share the concern about the aesthetics and the protection of the trees, et cetera, but just backing up for a little bit, how is the property currently zoned, and what's the sort of anticipated use of the ambassador's residence? I mean, will there be entertaining going on there? Will there just be one or two visitors, or will there be, a periodic fundraiser where the guard will be posted there and 30 cars will be coming onto the property? What's the zoning and what's the expected use of the property?
The zoning is R8 zone.
Right?
Zoning required September 6th.
Sorry.
It's the Forest Hill, the R1A zone, Forest Hills, Greenfield protected. It will be the ambassador's residence.
Excuse me. Could I ask you to come up to the microphone so that it will record?
Should I start from the beginning?
Please.
Yes, please.
The zoning, to answer the question, the zoning is R8 now. Before September 6th, it was the R1A Forest Hills Tree and Slope Protection Overlay Zone. It is the ambassador's residence, or will be the ambassador's residence. I understand he does not live there now, but will be moving there in the near future. He'll be using it as his residence, and like anyone else might be entertaining people there. It's not a event venue. It's not intended to be that. It is intended to be the residence of the ambassador. He may, as many people might, he might have guests over for dinner or something like that. But the office will continue to be at the Chancery. This is not the Chancery; it's simply the residence.
Can I ask you a question? Why do you think that there's not a special exception required for the guardhouse on the side of the property or the rear, but there is one for the front? What do you think the spirit or intent of that is? I'm just curious to know.
That's the way the zoning regulations read.
It's different for different properties, is what I understand. So you have to kind of look at each house, each property.
But there must be something unique about placing it at the front. I mean, obviously, it may or may not impact the aesthetics of the neighborhood or other issues where if it's on the side or rear, I guess it's anticipated it would not. I'm just wondering what whoever passed that law or zoning ordinance, why did they do it, and why do we think it's not an issue here?
Well, we haven't said we don't think it's an issue.
Sorry?
We haven't said that we don't think it's an issue.
No, he's just asking why did they come up with that zoning regulation?
And I didn't mean to characterize my opinion or anybody else's yet, Pat. I was just trying to understand the fundamentals of why they set it up this way.
Although, to your point about events, I mean, it is actually extremely common for ambassadors' residences to be used for events, and I've been to quite a few of them. Most of them, in fact, have spaces that are specifically for public use and events. I don't know if that's the case here, but just to your point, there probably will be large events there and things hosted there that are not just private dinner parties.
Right. That doesn't mean the guardhouse has to be bigger or smaller. It doesn't need to be placed there. But if that doesn't sound like that's a zoning issue in front of us anyway, with regard to the use of it.
How it deals with the neighborhood as far as parking and
Sure.
Whether it's valet parking or however they're going to handle it. The street is pretty wide in this particular area. The Essendon and 32nd.
Right, but if you've got 200 cars versus 10 cars for a dinner party, that's a different proposition. So I'm just trying to understand that.
I'm not sure it could fit either of those.
Gravel parking lot.
Well, there's more on-site. This property has more on-site parking than any of the other
Does it?
ambassador residences.
Yes, it's got a lot of.
Okay, I can't tell from these
There are
drawings.
probably a dozen ambassador residences in Forest Hills, and this is the only one, other than possibly Italy, that has this much on-site parking.
This is all gravel.
And when there's an event at the embassy,
Don't take that
the
to
Italian
Buffalo.
ambassador's residence, they actually don't usually let people park on the property. They usually park in the neighborhood.
In the neighborhood.
And that was one of the reasons that we placed the guardhouse the way we did, was because we didn't want to reduce the parking space that was inside the residence, so that we wouldn't take up any of those parking spaces. So that's why we looked at it where it is.
Do you have an estimate on the number of spaces within on site?
How many could you fit?
8.
If you, I imagine if you jammed in, I'm looking at a site plan here, if you jammed in every car that you possibly could, that's a typical car right there.
Yeah.
So you do 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 8 in front of the house. But that would mean you'd be blocking the front door, and maybe an equal number over on the courtyard on the side. If you were jamming them in, but that would be, you'd be stacking cars. You'd have to be moving cars in and out on the street to get it. That doesn't sound like that would be the way it would happen, but that's how they would probably fit.
I have one last question.
Just before we go back to you, do you have any other questions?
I do, but it's not regarding the site, so I'll hold that until we.
Do you have questions? Andrew? Mary Beth, are you?
No.
I'm just going to ask from a design sense. I know you said it was prefab, probably for cost or less impact on the site. But could you just explain to me why, or the commission, why you didn't look at something a little bit more in keeping with the French provincial style of this beautiful site building? I mean, this is very, very contemporary compared to all the buildings on the site and all the design of the site, including the fence.
Yeah, that's true.
So I'm just curious.
And the interesting thing is, it's certainly not an off-the-shelf solution.
Right.
It's going to be a customized solution.
Yeah, because you've got the brick that follows, and you've got the curve,
The
which
difficulty is that
right. So I'm just asking from a.
yeah, I know, but they want to be able to see all around, which means there's glass all around. And the second you start introducing more solidity, like the house itself, it changes the whole character of it, and it really sort of defeats the purpose of the guardhouse itself. It's a little bit like the stuff that you look at down on 16th Street or on Pennsylvania Avenue. When you start looking at those, they're sitting from the White House, but they have their own character, and they're more like this archetype.
I'm not saying I like the ones from the White House, but I mean, or maybe you don't either. But.
Yeah, and I mean, I understand your question. I just don't know
just,
how to satisfactorily
I know
answer it.
I know a lot was put into this house. I mean, we watched this house get built. So.
I was astounded it was as new as it was.
Yeah, a lot of money and a lot of care.
Let me ask if there are any questions from the community. No? Nothing else?
Yeah, I'll be quick. I guess, Mr. Collins, you're probably the best to ask him. I know these got sent to you about 11 days ago, but, you know, considering the ambassador moving to this new location, I was wondering if you guys could just give me an update on anything planned with the adjacent lot next to the current chancery on Tilden.
I passed your questions on to the embassy, and let me just read to you the responses that I got.
Great.
Okay, I'll read your questions and the responses. First is, what are the current plans for the future of the vacant lot on Tilden adjacent to the chancery? The answers are, there are no current construction plans under consideration, and at this point there is no timetable for commencement of construction. But the embassy will provide as much notice as possible of any anticipated activity that would change the ability of the public to cross the embassy's property for access. Your question, do you plan to meet the requirements of the R2 district to build by right, or do you plan on asking for zoning variances? The answer is there are currently no construction plans for the property, so it's too early to be able to answer that question.
Okay.
Would you be open to meeting with the nearby buildings and neighbors to discuss the future of the lot? Yes.
Great.
That's probably your key question.
Pretty much.
And then you asked about the stormwater runoff draining on off the southwest corner of the property. Do you have plans to mitigate the current runoff problem? Yes.
Okay.
So, getting to the real question, why don't would you be the point person for that?
I would love to be.
Well, I mean, I don't want to be the one running the show here. So
No.
I will put you in touch with, or I'll have someone from the embassy contact you. I'm not sure who it's going to be, so I said I don't want to put you in touch with several people. I just don't know who. But I'll have them reach out to you and then see what we can do about having that kind of discussion.
That's fantastic. Thank you.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure.
I just want to thank you all for coming to us early and being so responsive to our questions. This really helps us do our jobs better, and we really appreciate that.
Great. Well, you're welcome, and I believe that you all have my email or my colleague's email, so anything else that comes up, we will send to the ANC. Should I send it to you, Commissioner Ray? And then you can just send it on. And then the normal timetable is we file the application, we'll probably have the hearing, and I think to answer someone's question on that email, maybe 3-4 months for the process. 4 to 5, maybe 4 to 5 months for the process. So I'm guessing maybe 3 months in from the time we file, we'll get the hearing. So January, maybe February, and then construction permits will be what, 4 or 5, 6 months, maybe 7 months. I don't know how long.
Yeah.
But so that's the time.
And you'll notify the surrounding neighbors for the construction?
Well, they'll be notified of the application.
Right.
And we certainly can make a point of it.
Sometimes it's nice to tell the adjoining neighbors if something's going on.
I will pass that along to the investment here receptive.
And you'll invite us all over for the celebration party when it's done.
We'll be walking or riding.
That's
right. Either way.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So we are going to move on to the next item on our agenda, which is a presentation from Washington Gas on a project in Forest Hills. So I believe Stephen Jumper's here. Yep, there you are. Come on up. Again, Mary Beth, I'll turn it over to you to introduce the topic.
Yes, I'd like to thank Council Member Mary Che's office for giving us a heads up about this. And we really appreciate Washington Gas being here. As I explained to your team before you got here, this is not a witch hunt. This is just an opportunity for the community to learn what the problem is, how you're addressing it, how long it's going to take, and how we're all affected. So thank you for being here.
Okay. Thank you very much, Commissioner, and thank you for facilitating this meeting tonight. We reached out to Councilmember Che's office and
Excuse me, can you introduce yourself
I'm sorry.
and spell your name and everything?
Okay.
Thank you very much.
No problem. Stephen Jumper with Washington Gas, Director of Corporate Public Policy, Washington Gas Jumper, Jumper. So last week we reached out to the council member's office to ask her to help us facilitate this conversation because we had begun getting a number of complaints from the community about construction that was going on in their particular neighborhood. Washington Gas is embarking on probably what is its most aggressive construction project in our 160-year history. In fact, we have two major projects that are going on in Washington. One is what we refer to as formal case 1027, which is to replace mechanical couplings. Couplings are simply pieces that connect two pieces of pipe together. And so we are embarking on an initiative to replace many of those mechanical couplings in our distribution system. And then the second major initiative is our accelerated pipe replacement program, a major initiative to replace aging cast iron bare steel pipe that still resides in many parts of our distribution system. We have these accelerated pipe replacement programs in all three of our jurisdictions, so it's not just D.C., but we're doing the same kind of programs in Maryland and in Virginia. But a few weeks ago, we started getting a lot of emails from residents around Linian and Fessenden, particularly regarding gas odor. And obviously we're very concerned about the gas odor. At that time, we were actually doing some of the work related to the mechanical coupling project that I mentioned. And so but also we were about to gear up, and we have since geared up to do the second phase of that work, or the accelerated pipe replacement. So this community has seen just a broad, swath of construction activity for several months now, and obviously is very much concerned about what is it, why are we there, what are we doing, and obviously when is it going to be done, and obviously, is the neighborhood safe? And so we felt it was very important to come out tonight and really try to address all of those issues. I have several of my colleagues with me, and so for the sake of brevity, I'm going to ask my colleagues to just talk a little bit about the mechanical coupling project and what went on, the accelerated pipe replacement project and what is about to happen on that, and then also how we treat gas odor complaints and how we treat gas odor calls. So, Greg, if you could take just a couple of minutes, if we could take maybe 2 minutes each, and then we'll be open to any questions that you have.
Can I just ask you to solve the mystery, so we're not in suspense? Is the neighborhood safe?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, now you can.
Is the neighborhood where we're sitting right now safe?
Not far away.
All right, good afternoon, everyone, and good evening. My name is Greg Brown. Of course, I'm with Washington Gas, and I'm the field operator.
Excuse me, can I ask you to spell?
Gregory Brown, or Greg Brown, just like the color, no E. And I am the field operations manager for Montgomery County and the northwest quadrant of the district. In reference to the leak and that is at the area of Linian and Fessenden, we have a 6-inch bare steel pipe. It had some corrosion on it. The pipe has some age on it. We dispatched our crews. Normally when a leak comes in, they come in a couple of ways. They can come in as an odor complaint by a resident or passerby, or it can be turned in by one of our leak surveys. We do surveys of our entire piping system in intervals, depending on the type of area, 3 years, 5 years, or 1 year. Sometimes we can accelerate those. What we had discovered was what we call a grade 2 leak in that intersection on the pipe. A grade 2 leak is a non-hazardous leak by definition. We are allowed by DOT 192, that's the Department of Transportation, which regulates everything we do, every facet of the gas industry.
Is that U.S. or district?
U.S. feds. They dictate what we can do and how we can grade leaks. Now, a lot of times we know leaks can be a nuisance because you smell the odor. That's the mercaptan we put in. And like you hear the old expression, like a dog, sometimes it's the bark, but the bite's not that bad. And that's basically what we had. It was a low-level leak. We did excavate, and we were able to apply a clamp to stop that leak. But in the process, we noted that the pipe, it had some deterioration, but it wasn't a high level. So we decided to commence the process to get it replaced. From my office, I usually generate those replacement request because I'm sort of like the first eye. My team is the first eye. If we see something, we usually turn it over to our other team members, and they make assessments as to when and where to start a mass replacement if needed. Because of your concerns, we decided to accelerate it. We re-excavated that area to make sure those leaks weren't as bad as your constituents' concerns were, and they weren't. Matter of fact, we mitigated it down from a grade 2 leak even down to a grade 3 leak. And for extra precaution, we did just post some monitors out there just to monitor the leak. Also, at no time, even from the onset of the leak, when it was originated, did we had any migration. So there was nothing migrating to any of the homes, any of the building walls, any of the structures under the grounds, any of the sewers or anything. Everything was confined right to that intersection. So that's on the leak aspect from
Can you
my
show
end.
us on the map of where the leak is?
All right, let me put my second eyes here on. Okay. Okay, if I'm not mistaken, Featherden is here's Elliot. Okay, right here. The blue line is actually the new main that's going in, but the old main is running basically parallel just beyond this curve here on the west side. The leak was on the old main right here in the intersection, just north of that curve on the main in the roadway there.
So that's Lenny and Investment.
Yeah,
Right by the
It's right near the
Kuwait.
Kuwait.
Good thing they're gone.
Correct.
So is that where neighbors were reporting that they were smelling gas? They weren't smelling it in their homes?
No, they were smelling it
that's,
outside.
when they're walking the dogs.
Walking the
and-
dogs. Yeah, we get a lot of them like that. You know.
Or running by.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Bert.
So my name is David Thomas. I manage our construction activities at Washington Gas, specifically in the district. To piggyback on Greg and Steven, so we do have two projects running simultaneously. The first is in order to remediate the leak on Lincoln Investment. So this blue line again is the new main that we're installing in the roadway. Approximately 2,700 feet of main is going to be required to be installed, and there are 24 services or individual houses that are served off that main that are also going to be affected or need to be replaced as a result. So we
And,
mobilize.
excuse me, you're going to be replacing the pipes from the main to those homes?
The lateral, that is correct, yes.
To the house.
To the house, that's correct.
Really?
Because when we go ahead and we'll replace this main here, what we're going to do is we're going to abandon the old main, the main that's leaking. So if we weren't to replace the services to the individual homeowners, obviously they'd be without gas.
So you're going to be digging up their front yards? Or are
In
you
some
gonna be
cases,
doing
that may be required, yes.
Do you do pipe bursting, or you go in where the pipe
And
is
when
and-
we can, what we'd like, our preference is always to insert. So essentially what that
Right.
means is to use the existing service as a conduit
Okay.
and insert a newer, smaller pipe size diameter. That obviously.
Well, it doesn't tear up the yard.
Exactly,
Right.
yeah. But where we can, we will do that, absolutely. But if we can't, then unfortunately, we're going to have to open dig and direct barrier across the line.
And have you notified? I'm sorry.
No, I was just getting ready to get to that. Yep. So we mobilized to the job site on September the 27th. Notification letters were sent out to all the customers on the 24th. Typically, we allow for a 2 to 3 week lag time, but unfortunately, due to the nature of this particular project, we decided internally to go ahead and mobilize quickly rather than waiting a 2 to 3 week time period. Originally, when we started this project, we estimated about a 3 to 4 month schedule. Today, I was told by our contractor, DCI, Dynamic Concept, they're the individuals doing the work. We have 1,800 of the 2,700 feet of main that are in. So our revised schedule, we're looking at the end of November.
Looking at when?
End of November.
So total length, maybe 2 months.
Give or take, yeah. Of course, there's weather involved with that. And then individual customers and homeowners' availability, their schedule, and their time frame. Yeah. So in addition to that project, we also have another project that Stephen mentioned, FC 1027. That's 43 individual services or houses that are affected. To date, we have 37 of those service laterals that have already been replaced and completed, leaving a variance of 6. We started that project on the 15th of August, and notification letters were mailed out on the 31st of August.
So is it all the houses along
So,
the
so to clear that,
line,
yep. So
or-
to go back where I started, so the project on Lydian, you'll have the main, the 2,700 feet. These houses are represent, or these dots represent the houses. Where you see the dots in close proximity to this line, this main line, those are the 24 that are associated with this, with the original project that I talked about. Around the periphery, where you see no solid line in the street, these are the 43 houses that represent the scattered service or FC 1027 project.
And this was just a normal...
This was just part of our, as Stephen said, part of
Okay.
our infrastructure modernization efforts. Yep.
And the leak just happened to be up here
Unfortunately,
at the
yeah.
same time. Okay.
Maybe this is a question back to Mr. Jumper as well, or to any of you. I was trying to get a better sense of how you inventory all your pipes and how you assess and sort of how you react if you've got a leak in this 2,500 foot section or however many feet it was. Is there an engineering judgment? Well, gee, if this property or this main line was X number of years old, and all the other main lines in this area ought to be also assessed, or when did we most recently assess them? Are there parallels that we should be drawing, and how does the community know that's
So
happening?
yeah, our engineering group is constantly monitoring our system. We use an application called Optimane. It kind of assesses the pipe size, diameter, the material, and then when the infrastructure was installed. And then going back to linear resident, we would look at history of our infrastructure. Have there been any leaks, the grade of the leaks, the severity of the leaks, and then from there we issue a risk score factor. And that's kind of how we constantly assess and monitor our system.
So how come they're all in this one particular area and not spread out? They seem to be past 32nd Street down to Broad Branch.
The scattered that you're referring to?
Well, yeah, even the main
The
line. Because
scattered-
there are two houses closer to 32nd Street.
Yeah, the scattered is actually also targeting but a specific material that's within a specific date range as well. So some of these houses, that are neighbors to ones that aren't highlighted or identified on this map. One, they may not be gas customers. Two, if they are gas customers, they just don't meet the criteria for this particular FC 1027 program.
So, in other words, they may not have the mechanical coupling on their service line.
That is correct.
I see.
Okay, Commissioner Ray?
David, how do you handle, if somebody's yard is going to be torn up, how is that handled?
So, yeah.
How torn up is it? And then how do you give them the notice? And then how do you deal with the cost of things?
Right. So conversations are had on the front end with individual customers to let them know, hey, we're need to replace your service. We'd like to schedule a date that's amenable and agreeable to everybody. Once that's established, they kind of walk through the installation process, let them know what installation method that we're going to be using. In the event that we would be tearing up somebody's yard, then again, obviously that onus would be on us and our contractor to make sure once the work is complete that the yard is restored to exactly the way it was prior.
And so once we complete the construction and excavation, then we do just temporary paving. And so there is a period of time where you will just have temporary paving. And with winter approaching, there is a winter moratorium in which we are prohibited from doing paving. And so it could be that temporary paving there for quite a while until that winter moratorium.
That was my next question.
Yeah, so
because,
what Steve was referring to, restoration of the road. So yes, sidewalks and streets, hardscapes.
Yeah, I had a question for you about the notification. The notification is going out to the customers that you're going to run the...
Correct,
okay?
yep.
But there's people that live up and down that street
You're
that had no
100% correct.
idea that anything was going on, that weren't notified or whatever. Just
So currently in
people
Praise,
the neighborhood.
we do realize that that's an issue. So the mechanism that we currently have is, you're absolutely correct, there's customers that we call affected, but they're also non-customers. So that onus is then on the contractor, in this case would be Dynamic Concept. Their schedule will then go out and just let the remainder of the community know, hey, we're in the area, we're doing work, we have letters, they should be providing everybody with those letters who
So,
are.
put up a sign or something like
Now,
that?
DDOT also
or-
requires project signage. I'm sure you've seen some other signs, Pepco, DC Water, things like that. So it's my understanding that there are
Well, while they're standing there digging up the street and the Washington Gas truck is there, yeah, there's a sign. But
No, I mean
understand
actual
that.
posting signs that let you know Washington Gas is in the air. DCI, Dynamic Concepts, is the
Beforehand?
contractor. Correct. There should be signs out there now. It's my understanding that there is 2 signs.
2 signs, okay. Because there were a bunch of neighbors sort of complaining, what's going on.
Right.
And finding out afterwards and sort of not knowing beforehand.
Right.
And it affects them and their ability to get.
Right, and I understand that concern. For us, it's difficult, because then, for us is where do we end? How far of an umbrella do we cover with notification? Obviously, we'd like to do within a few block radius, but then, there are other neighbors who could be potentially walking in the area, walking their dogs, going for a jog, or driving through the area. They may fall outside of that umbrella. We can't hit everybody as much as we
No,
like
but
to.
are there plans to think that umbrella has to be bigger?
I think the issue is that a lot of neighbors use Linnean as a cut-through.
A drive-through, right.
And so, I'm 6 blocks away over on 29th between Albemarle and Brandywine, but I'm affected because that's how I get to Chevy Chase.
Right.
So I think that's the issue.
And we do
It's
realize
ridiculous
internally we're looking to
expect
develop
them
certain
to
processes and procedures to kind of expand that
paper.
scope and that
No,
umbrella.
but the people that live in the neighborhood and come out and walk their dogs there and things like that should have been notified.
Yeah, they
So
should
that's-
have. They should have been notified. And we're looking for a really good communication mechanism that we can use going forward. So if there's a neighborhood listserv or something
Yeah,
like that.
we have those
Yeah,
through
we-
here. So
we-
when something like this happens in our
correct.
area, if you reach out to us, we can distribute it through the community as
Well,
well.
if you got enough, you want to acknowledge the paper.
Just 1 second, let me make sure that everybody here is covered. Good. Did you have one more?
No, I just wanted to be sure that the street curbs, gutters,
Yep.
sidewalks are going to be
It
repaired.
will all be
because
replaced, yep.
That's something and repaired well.
Now, DDOT
Because
does
we are
set
trying
the
to get
paving
the
limits
streets
and
repaved.
restoration limits, so we will
Yeah,
repair
not
everything
just
to DDOT
patches.
specs.
Okay.
Correct.
That we
Correct.
get total repaving, correct?
To DDOT specs, correct.
I'm just sorry, just this last thing. So going forward, maybe informing us would be a good thing to do so that we can use the ways that we have to get the word out.
Oh, yeah.
Can you guys commit to do
You
that?
can definitely leverage the ANCs, right, as a communication. Yeah.
Okay.
As I said earlier, I mean, the Accelerated Pipe Replacement Program is a citywide project, so we're going to be going into other neighborhoods, and so I think lesson learned is that we should reach out to you all and let you help us communicate to us.
Absolutely.
Sir.
Yeah, so I live on the east side of Union Avenue, and just take basically just south of Besson.
Okay.
My house is not that done.
Okay.
I have not received a letter. Our whole side of the street has been smelling and complaining of gas odors for over a year. You guys dug the street up once. You dug the street up a second time, and then I think all hell broke loose on our end because we felt like the problem really hadn't been addressed. And so Mr. Jumper's been on the receiving end of our emails. You actually have a very clear means of communicating with us because we've all been emailing with you and Councilmember Chet. So I have a couple of questions. One is, why are the houses on that side of the street not, and I'm sorry to be asking these questions here, but we've been asking these questions for over a month.
Can you give us your name if you don't mind?
David Steinmetz.
Thank you.
So we've been asking these questions for over a month, and we haven't really gotten any clear answers on the connection between all these different things. So, first of all, just to clarify, when you came back, when you dealt with this the first time, it was a while ago. That first leak, and you clamped it, and then it was safe, and you dug it up again to check that it was still safe.
We had a second.
So, but that accounts for the leak. So then, why are our houses not being affected in terms of...
On this side of the street you're referring to? So there's actually a second main that's on the opposite side of the street adjacent to the existing main that's feeding these houses along this block. So they are indeed gas customers, but they're fed off a different main.
So the yellow pipe is going on the west side right now, along that curve, and there's another main...
Correct,
on the other
adjacent
side.
on the
That's
opposite side
fine.
of the street. Correct. It's not the same material. I believe that was installed in the 90s. I'd have to go back and look at our construction.
So the leak was coming from the far side of the street, the ferrous metal pipe that was probably the west side. So we're not going to get dug up we don't need to worry about our side of the main.
Correct.
So the information we got was the guy who was out on the street 24/7, periodically waking us all up in the middle of the night with a hydraulic hose, told us he was pulling gas out of the pipe so it wouldn't explode, which is what prompted our hysterical.
Right.
So we're glad it didn't explode.
Yeah. He was aspirated, right? Where he was aspirated, right? What he was doing because at that time, what he was doing at that time, we hadn't commenced the second excavation. So the pipe was still there.
Excuse me, can you come up to the mic?
You will get some migration. You will get some migration in the soil. Once you get that migration in the soil, it accelerates, I guess, the odor, so to speak. So once you open it up and it's able to breathe, your readings go down, and basically it's mitigated. He actually, to be honest, be truthful, he misquoted. He was aspirating to bring the readings down, but not so the pipe would explode, because the pipe can't explode underground. Gas has some very unique qualities. It has to be a special mixture of gas to air for it to be an explosion. Inside the pipe, you have 100% gas. 100% gas cannot explode. Even outside, in excavations, people wonder if there's going to be an explosion outside, and that's extremely rare. For an explosion to take place, the gas has to be ignited in a confined area. The worst that could happen in an excavation, if something were to happen, you'd get an ignition, the hole would light up, sort of like a gas grill, but not an explosion. So that was a misquote.
So all of this communication is very helpful. I think it's overdue and probably worth figuring out a way to get communication. And again, I recognize the issue of people driving through the neighborhood not knowing what's going on, but we've been the ones smelling gas, our kids being woken up in the middle of the night with the aspiration, and then this misinformation. So thanks for clarifying.
Good. Okay. Are there any other questions or comments? No? Thank you. Thank you for taking the time to explain this to us. And please do keep in mind whenever you're in this area to reach out to us and let us get the word out to the community.
This is really late in the game, but does your website have your activities listed on the status of those and what's going on? I don't know if that was helpful or not. Or okay.
Look at it by ward.
Okay.
And I was just going to say, the Forest Hills Connection, I think, is going to do an article on that. Marlene Berlin is the person. I don't know. Are you all going to cover it? Do you know?
Do you anticipate anything else in our area? Or
My
that's
understanding
just a
that
follow-up?
Yeah, there are no planned projects within the next, I'd say, 2 years.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Okay. So now we're going to move on to the next item, presentation on DC statehood. Is Nathan Hartman here? Nathan, hi.
So, hello, my name's Nathan Hartman. That's Hartman. Unfortunately, I don't have any pictures to hang up or anything. I just have myself to look at. So I'm here to talk to you about DC statehood, which, for me...
Excuse me, sorry. Who do you represent? Or?
Oh, I represent the DC Statehood Speakers Bureau. It's from the mayor's office, essentially people who just go around to talk about and educate people on the issues of DC statehood.
And specifically, you'll talk about the referendum.
Exactly, yes.
Next month.
Yeah. So, the issue of DC statehood, just to start out with the why of it. Now, this is one of the longest standing voter disenfranchisements in this country. We have 650,000 people living in this city, and they don't have the same right to congressional representation as other people. Simply put, they've earned it. You know, you have people serving in the military, serving on juries, however reluctantly. You have people serving on commissions like this, or just showing up on 9 p.m. on a Tuesday in general to talk about issues improving their communities. And they don't have the same rights to vote on the federal level, the same rights to representation that the rest of us have, or the rest of the country has. And of course, this impacts people as well. I mean, D.C. has the highest rate of federal income tax per person in the country, but they don't get a vote on how that tax is spent. D.C. has one of the larger economies in the country, but they don't get a vote, how that's... Oh, excuse me, I have a bit of a cold. They don't get a vote on how that's used. And so it really comes down to D.C. just having earned this right to representation, having been deprived of it for far too long. But the real issue I'm here to talk about is how we can do this. Now, back in June, the people of D.C. came together for a constitutional convention. And in this, they wrote a constitution that you can find on statehood.dc.gov. And that constitution is now being put up for referendum in the upcoming November election. Now, voting for this referendum will mean that you approve the Constitution and that you are asking the D.C. Council to bring an application to become a state to Congress and the President following the inauguration in January of 2017. Essentially, this doesn't mean that it will instantly become law. Just passing this referendum doesn't necessarily mean that D.C. will become a state immediately, but it sends a message that we, the people of D.C., know that this is important and that we're willing to support this at the federal level, and essentially that we're willing to stand together for this. That's really all that we have to ask from you today, is just on November 8th to consider voting for D.C. statehood. And yeah, I don't have quite as much to say as the previous speakers, but that's essentially the long and short of it. Any questions?
Do you have the wording, the specific wording that will be?
Oh, on the referendum? I do not. It's just an advisory proposal approving the Constitution and requesting that it be brought before Congress. I don't have the specific wording immediately to hand, though.
There's a voter guide out in the hall there. Could you grab that?
It's in there. The wording is in there.
Wording's in there.
Yeah.
Oh.
Does that wording? Sorry. Okay. Does that wording incorporate by reference a date certain version of the Constitution, the D.C. Constitution?
Let's see.
I mean, because it seems like there's been efforts to amend or revise that. I'm just curious what it is. Not that anyone ultimately really cares that much about the fine details, but we do.
That makes sense. About 4 hours ago, they changed the name on it, for example.
Right. I know they were debating some of that today.
Yeah.
Just wondering if it's in its final. Do you know if it's in its final form?
I believe it's essentially as final as they're going to get. They're making some small changes to things like the name of the state as they changed earlier today, but large-scale changes were mostly decided in the June Constitutional Convention.
Right. And the changes that we had put forward in our resolution, spearheaded by David Bardeen, apparently were not accepted in the version that passed out of committee. So.
Here. It's on page 6 of that book that we've got. Yeah.
Yeah, but no, he's right.
But so does the problems
They didn't
that
accept
ACs and
some of
SMBs being mixed up.
Right.
amendments.
So what this is asking is that the council approve the proposal that would establish that the citizens of the District of Columbia agree that the district should be admitted to the Union as the state of New Columbia, or maybe it's now state of Washington, D.C., approve of a Constitution of the State of New Columbia to be adopted by the Council, and approve the State of New Columbia's boundaries as adopted by the New Columbia Statehood Commission on June 28, 2016, and agree that the State of New Columbia shall guarantee an elected representative form of government. So it's a pretty straightforward referendum.
Yeah,
but it's not saying that we're going to adopt the Constitution as it exists now. Mm-hmm. It says it's an open-ended, adopt whatever the Council does.
So they could adopt it in December.
Approve of a Constitution to be adopted by the Council.
Right. Okay. Which suggests, respectfully, I'm not sure that it's really in a final format, or that significant changes could still be made to it. But
I believe they can, but essentially the extent of the information I was provided with doesn't seem to indicate there are any huge final changes planned.
Okay.
Have the candidates for president spoken out on D.C. statehood?
They have. I believe Secretary Clinton, she hasn't spoken on it personally, but the Democratic platform is in favor of it. I don't believe Donald Trump has, nor Gary Johnson, and Jill Stein has spoken in favor of it, I'm certain. Can't really speak for any beyond those four, though.
Any other questions? Any comments from people? No?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thanks
much.
for coming out.
Get a sign.
Get better next time.
David can get your sign.
I got a sign.
Okay, next item on the agenda is, do we have anyone here from DC Water? No? So we scratch that, and we'll move on to other business. So let's move directly to the treasurer's report.
You all have a copy of this somewhere in the bottom of your stack. This shows you our budget to date, and in addition, at the bottom, you can see receipts and expenditures since our last meeting in September. We've had a total of $3,896.32 in receipts. That's due to our Q3 allotment, which was just released at the end of September. And we've expended $4,721.51, largely on taxes and grants.
Okay, and so we have, looking at this, we have one more quarterly allotment to come.
Yeah, that'll be for the last quarter. That quarterly report is due at the end of this month, I think.
The Verizon's
Oh, yes. Verizon is our internet service, so I can go through this if you want. So the receipt is our Q3 allotment. After that, that's just staff wages. This is quarterly taxes for our employee. The grant that we recently approved for the Merge Home and School Association, and finally our monthly Verizon wireless bill for live stream.
Okay. Is there anything that we need to approve?
No, not at this time.
No. Okay. Great. Any other business any commissioners want to raise? No. For the record, too, one thing that I forgot to announce during commissioner announcements, anybody who traditionally votes at Murch Elementary, this year the polling will be moved to St. Paul's Lutheran Church across the street because Murch is closed now for construction. So I want to make sure that that's in the record. St. Paul's Lutheran Church.
Across the street.
It's on 36th Street.
Don't forget to vote.
And make sure you look all the way down to the bottom of your ballot where the ANC races are.
Commissioner Nugent, I had said at the outset, they're given a status update at the outset on the Steps with Dignity bill in front of the council. I'll just let the sort of general audience know I may be coming back to you and potentially proposing to see if the commissioners might be interested in a special session to potentially pass a resolution, and I would propose in support of the bill, but to also entertain any public opinions, pro or con, or concerns or refinements to the bill. So I just wanted to give the commissioners a heads up to that. I'm in contact with Councilmember Mary Che's office, and again, it sounds like this may be put up for council vote on November 1st and or the 18th. But either way, it sounds like it's not certain as to whether the mayor will sign the bill as well. So I do think that it still would be a significant matter to take up as a potential resolution from our ANC. I don't know if anybody else has a suggestion or advice on that or concerns, but
I think a special meeting might be in order. It sounds like there are a lot of strong opinions on both sides.
Right.
There's been some press recently against the bill as well, which I read with interest. So I think it might make sense to organize a special meeting where we can try to air some of those views before we come back to the commission with a specific recommendation.
We need to do that quite soon because first week of November. You'd want us to wait.
Yeah, I mean, given it's the 18th, I'm not sure if we can. Well, being new to this, even if we decided not that we're an official subcommittee looking at that special meeting, but we would not pass a resolution on this until the next ANC meeting in November, or would we have the capacity to do that at a special meeting?
We could call a special meeting if we needed to. There are certain requirements for us to do so. But to try to organize something like this by November 1st would be tough. If it was November 18th, our next meeting would be November 15th, so we could do it.
Right. Okay. Well, I would imagine that this would play out, that we get a read as to what's going on by November 1st, if not sooner, and then hypothetically call for a special meeting before Veterans Day weekend, and then come to the ANC on the 15th and potentially pass it.
Okay, well, let's look at a calendar and see what we can arrange. Okay. Any other business? No?
To make a motion to adjourn.
One more thing, not quite yet. So just to note that our next meeting will be November 15th here at Forest Hills of DC. And then we'll entertain your motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Approved. Opposed? Nay?
Friendly amendment now?
Are we having December meeting?
December 15th.
We don't have one planned at the moment. I don't see a reason. Hard to say. I don't see a reason to right now if stuff comes.